Welcome back to Aquarium 911, where I help you with your problems in your aquarium. Today, we're going to feature an email from Scott, and Scott is having a problem with his Cabomba. Let's dig in and start finding our clues, and then find our course of action. Hello, Bentley. This is my setup. I have a 125-gallon tank that is 1.5 years old, using an under-gravel filter system that is 3 inches deep pea gravel as the substrate. The pH is 7.8, but it goes down to 7.01 with pressurized CO2, and that puts the CO2 at about 30 to 35 parts per million. My carbonate hardness is 12. My general hardness is 18. TDS, so total dissolved solids, is at 210. Temperature, 76 degrees Fahrenheit. NO3, aka nitrate, is less than or equal to 10 parts per million. And phosphorus at 1.5. So, not a lot, but some. Lighting. I have 3 Weak Aqua T90 Pros sitting at max power. They're hung 10 inches above the tank, and this produces 526 par at the substrate. That's a lot of light. Compared to most of the tanks that you and I are going to keep, that's a ton of light. At most, mine might have like 100 par about mid-water, not at the substrate. So that's significantly more light than any of the tanks that I personally keep. But given that we're using pressurized CO2, and we're keeping it somewhere in that 30 to 35 parts per million in a 125-gallon tank, we're going for what most people would call the high-tech setup. Very high light, high CO2, trying to go big growth. I have a small amount of dust algae on the tank glass and some of my Anubias plants. I do a 50% weekly water change. You used a lot of acronyms. Ferts. I use the APT3 12 milliliters and Seachem's nitrogen 5 milliliters dosed Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Planting 90+% substrate coverage with stem plants, Rotalas like Atra, Macrandra, Bosei, Ludwigia White. Yeah, we're going hardcore in this thing. Ludwigia White. Hygrophila poly, Lobelias, Myriophyllum elenatoides, Bacopa salzmani, Embulia, Echinodorus green and red, so a couple of swords, Buses, Anubias, red root floaters, and others. You might get the picture that I like a heavily planted tank. Me too, but you're going some really high demand plants, which is going to look stunning. I'm sure pictures have shown some of this already. I keep small fish. I'm currently running 15 tanks. Nice. Current fish in this tank are 70 rummy nose. That's a school. Yeah. 15 green tiger barbs, 2 Siamese algae eaters, 3 hillstream loaches, 30 plus cherry shrimp, and 10 amano shrimp. Okay, so we've got a little bit of a crew in there, but we're not doing anything that's going to be really good at cleaning that dust algae. So either you're doing that manually, or you don't mind the appearance so much, and it's kept mostly under control by that very high plant load. But with that high light, we have a higher chance of getting that kind of dust algae, right? All of my plants seem to be growing well, except for my Cabomba purple. We're not even doing normal Cabomba. We're doing Cabomba purple, which is a fairly high demanding variant of Cabomba. But if you look at all the other plants in this list, and some of the stats, that higher CO2, that powerful light, we kind of should expect some very high demand things to be ready in this aquarium. Cabomba has always died in my tanks, even the green. I tried several times in the last 1.5 years with no luck. But Cabomba red, though, is growing a bit. The purple loses a few leaves, but the main issue is that they do not stay rooted. The base of the stem melts, and no side roots. This is our first major clue. We are struggling with this plant to stay rooted. And when you do have it planted in the substrate, it's melting away and dying. So something is going on here. And I personally have experienced this with standard green Cabomba. And I fixed it. So guess what? I already know where we need to go. Or at least what has worked for me in the past. Now, I haven't been at quite that extreme high of light, but I have kept it. I have kept it very well. So, we've got that first clue. Let's make sure we finish the email, check for any other important clues, and then we'll know what to do. I've always run my lights for 8 hours until last week when I upped them to 12 hours. 12 hours with that much light is nuts. You, sir, are an animal. Increased over the course of 3 weeks. It has only been a week at the 12 hours, but I think I have seen some small side roots. Oh, and I should tell you that as the stems have lifted, I have just let them float until I see good roots or they all melt away. I observed something very similar when I was trying to have success with Cabomba in an old 20 long way back, when that was like my little like mixed guppy farm thing at the time. Well, endlers. Not actual guppies, endlers. I have enclosed a few photos to help visualize the issue, and I hope we can find a solution. Cheers, Jeff. P.S. I really enjoy your YouTube channel. Thank you. Alright, so let's talk about your problem. So first we can kind of examine these pictures. Let's just go over the big clue. The big clue. There's some small clues in here too, but the big clue. We have an extremely high energy tank. And what we're seeing is that at the lowest part, where we're going into the substrate where the roots are, things are melting away in our Cabomba. But we have 500 par at the substrate, so this isn't a low light issue, or is it? We have a lot of stems growing, so we might be seeing a certain amount of light struggling to get through. Spoiler alert, that's not our problem. But usually that is the first problem. When we're seeing any melting and death happening at the very bottom, at the root portion of a stem, that usually is an indication that all of our light coming through is not penetrating down to that bottom portion, and that plant is using its natural understanding of these things are not very efficient anymore, shed them, use our nutrients on the growth that is doing all the work, because that will ensure we have the best chance of prolonged existence, right? Not that plants necessarily think, but that's just how they're designed. If they know that things are becoming inefficient, they will shed them, try and reabsorb some of those nutrients, and focus on the places where high levels of photosynthesis are occurring, and that healthier foliage has the best chance of survival, and thus can trigger the most potential growth. This is how plants operate at a very basic level. So we can see the picture here of the red Cabomba. Maybe it's the purple Cabomba. We got some fish photobombing here. It looks very red to me, but that just could be the saturation with the light climbing up along some wood. We've got our red floaters, and we can see some of that red Cabomba from the top. It looks lovely. I mean, your coloration is great in here. That Ludwigia white is looking fantastic. Let's see, you've got like, that's either Hra or Macrandra. I'm going to assume that's Macrandra, just looking at the color and leaf shape in these Rotalas. It looks wonderful. We can see a little touch of like green Cabomba here, or that might be Cabomba red. I'm trying to remember if Cabomba red is red all the way through, if that's the purple Cabomba. I haven't gone through many of the variants of Cabomba just because I grew it once, I had some struggles with it. I figured out how to fix those struggles, but I know that like the purples and reds really want crazy high light, and I don't typically keep that much light in my aquariums, or I'm not trying to push that much CO2 to keep them happy. Yeah, we've just got, all your plants look super healthy, and I can see where you're, okay, so I think that's the Cabomba red, because like the tops of it are getting red, and the rest was the purple that you were showing us at first. I don't know every plant, we're going to put that out there. I've got a pretty good grasp at a wide variety of things, but I'm not perfect. And we can see lots of little stems coming off those Rotalas in that last one, plus those green tiger barbs. I love green tiger barbs. That's not obvious. I can put my phone away. I don't even need this email anymore. I know our problem. And I know exactly how I'd fix it, because the same way I fixed it in the past. Now, I can't guarantee, because this worked on green Cabomba. Green Cabomba is not quite as demanding as the purple and reds. But in general, what I have noticed with Cabomba and water wisterias, they seem to really hate being physically planted in. They function almost more like an epiphyte, and at least that's how I've got it in my brain. So what I have done in the past to be successful with Cabomba and Water Sprite is similar to how you're floating them. Instead, what I'll do is take a light weight around the base so that it sits on top of the substrate, and then I'll let all those roots grow out and anchor itself. Rather than me putting the stem actually into the substrate, I'm just letting it rest right on top. And then what I'm letting that plant do is naturally grow out all its extra roots, kind of like what an epiphyte will do, that push those roots down to the substrate to help anchor itself. What I have found is that anytime I compact around those stems, they wither and die. I don't know exactly why. That's the thing that kills me, is like I don't exactly know why from a like botanical perspective, like the botanist line of things, right? All I know is that in my experience, anytime with both Wisteria and Cabomba, if I push them into the substrate physically, they die. But if I let them sit on top with a weight and let their roots grip into the substrate and form a root system into the substrate and hold them down, then they survive, then they thrive, and then they start looking amazing and go all over the effing place because, well, They grow like weeds when they're happy. But you've got a super high powered tank and you're dosing 3 times a week. The only other concern I might have is that we're talking about how our nitrates are sitting at 10 ppm or less, and we're dosing 3 times a week. So my concern is, staying that lean with that dense in a that high demand tank, there is a potential that the Cabomba is not eating up as much of those nutrients in the water system as the rest of those super aggressive stems, like those Ritalas. And what's going to end up happening is, over time, they're going to keep kind of having this losing battle, so to speak, where we can test and see that there's 10 ppm worth of stuff in the water, but the demand is making it so it's even leaner than that as far as the Cabomba is concerned for its uptake. Now, when it's continually fighting this game of regrowing roots and trying to make itself healthy, that's not helping us. So, one thing I would do at first is change nothing else, just get a little weight. Get some simple lead weights, whatever, and lightly tie them so that it holds the Cabomba down against the substrate, but don't actually plant it into the substrate. So wait for those next sets of little roots, try to bring it down, and see if we can hold it there and let it naturally build out a root system from there. And if that happens and it goes fine, and from there on out everything starts looking good, we've solved the problem immediately. I would say you probably, at your level of light and CO2, should see this in 2 to 3 weeks. Maybe a month if you want to be really, really conservative. But with that much CO2, that much light, constant nutrition, heavy, almost Dutch-esque level planting, I think we should see this in 2 to 3 weeks, whether or not we're going to be successful. If we're still seeing some struggles, this is where I would start considering making some adjustments to our fertilizer regime and maybe trying to find a little extra day where we're putting extra nutrition in and trying to get us closer to that 10 to 20 range all the time when we're testing. And that might help boost that extra little bit of nutrition. And my biggest concern, given that we're looking at stems rotting, is almost purely on the micro side. I think this is something where a little extra boost of micronutrients might be our best friend right now, because maybe with all these other high demand plants, these big colorful plants, they're sucking up a lot of those things that this plant also needs. And we're talking about reds and purples, we might need extra iron. That might be the thing we need, maybe more than anything. But in general, root and stem health comes down typically to calcium and magnesium. You have really high general hardness compared to most people doing this stuff, so that shouldn't be our issue, which is why I'm kind of leaning into that iron and some of our other micros, because you have enough general hardness to where that shouldn't be the issue. There should be plenty of calcium and magnesium available based on your testing. And your substrate should be pulling some of that in, doing all that wonderful exchange, that cation exchange, right? I don't think that's our problem. I think we need a little extra micros if it's not purely just let it build its root system out. So start there. And then after, I would say 3 weeks, if you're not seeing a noticeable difference in that progression, maybe even a month, then let's consider adding a little extra micros to start, and maybe even doing just full-on all-in-one to get a little extra nitrate and some of the other stuff in there. But I would gamble iron and micros are where we want to start. This is an easy one, mostly because I've dealt with it before. Cabomba can be really temperamental, and so I can understand why, especially in a super high-demand tank where you're playing with the purples and reds, you're having some issues. So hopefully this helps resolve the problem. If it doesn't, in, say, month and a half, if you're still having some problems, follow me up in email. We'll keep trying to figure this problem out, okay? Jeff, thank you so much. I appreciate the picture of your tank. It's beautiful. I'm going to pull my phone back out. I got to look at them again because I'm really jealous of that Ludwigia white. It looks so good. I mean, you have such a wonderful, high, what most people would look for in a very high-tech tank. Big, powerful lighting, lots and lots of really high-demand plants, all looking really well. We just got one that's kind of struggling on us, but that's fixable. And I think we're going to put you on the path to success. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider giving a like and leave a comment down below. Have you experienced this kind of problem with Cabomba before? Did you have a different way to fix this problem? I want to hear from you. If you've never tried growing any plants at this crazy level, what's the first one you see where you're like, I want it, gimme, I want it, gimme. I want to hear from you guys. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. This, like, comment, subscribe is literally the easiest and free way to tell old Papa YouTube, hey, I like what this crazy guy's doing. Someone else might too. It's one of the best ways to help all of us YouTubers not only grow our channels, but keep doing what we're doing without having to take things like dumb sponsorships. I know, right? And people like me who try to minimize the ads on you. As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching. And stay awesome.